One of the biggest questions that I get during a listing appointment is what costs are involved in selling my house? Well, obviously, the biggest cost is going to be the commission that you pay. So, when you are interviewing agents, they're probably going to discuss the commission amounts with you, what those splits are between themselves, and whoever brings the buyer to the table. That's usually going to be your biggest expense in selling your house. Then you're going to have to look at what are your closing costs. As a seller, those are typically very minimal. You're going to have a closing fee from the title company. You're going to have the document preparation fee. If you have a mortgage that they're going to have to follow up with to get a release, then there may be a fee for that and a fee for the wiring. There's always some junk fees thrown in there, but typically the closing costs on the seller side are going to be minimal. I tell people about $500 or less. Now, there's a couple of things that we have to think about that we may have or we may not have, and that's going to be repairs. So once the buyer negotiates the contract and you go under contract, that buyer's going to have an inspection period. And they may come back with some stuff that you were totally unaware of as a seller. So you might want to keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, well, I know that we may have a problem here. How much do we need to budget? How willing to negotiate are we going to be? The other thing is you may have a buyer who needs closing cost concessions, meaning they need the seller to pay part of the expenses they're going to incur in purchasing the home. Again, you don't really know any of that until you get under contract and you get underway. If a buyer needs closing costs, they are going to ask for it in the initial offer. But there's no way that an agent that lists your home can tell you what your bottom line is going to be at the closing table if you've not gotten a contract yet, because so many variables play into that bottom line. I will say, if we sell at full purchase price, this is what you're going to get, but that doesn't take into consideration if we have to give some money to the buyer for repairs or if they're going to need closing costs. So anytime I send an offer out to my sellers, I make sure that I send them an updated net sheet showing what the net profit to them is going to be, as well as if I suggest a counter, what their net would be from that counter. What questions do you have about the selling process? Leave them in the comments for me and I'll answer them in a future video.